You are Locked On Hawks POSTCAST, part of Locked On Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Hawks POSTCAST. It is your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra, Batiste, and alongside me is DeShaun, Tate. This episode of our Locked On Hawks POSTCAST is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, ATL teams took care of business in the Windy City today, really dating back 36 hours. We'll talk about how the Hawks took a page from the Braves today and united yesterday in the and one, and we'll look ahead to a rare opportunity for the Hawks and who's got next. But first, T and Tate talk about the Hawks finally breaking through against the Bulls with a 113-101 win tonight. And Tate, you said it wasn't just a win, but a very impressive one for you.
I thought so. I think a major part of that was because of what they have shown over time that led up to this particular game, right? So I think first and foremost, I wanted to see how they would come out because I had some concerns like, oh my God, after not, having much rest, which I do think this little bit of rest did help them, but just having so many games, it feels like, I was getting tired and I wasn't doing no running up and down the court. But,
right.
And even just playing against, some very good teams, physically imposing, Milwaukee team, things like that, not allowing that Milwaukee loss to take their heart, let alone their energy amongst other things away from them. I think that that's something that kind of helped quite a bit. They kind of seem to have stuck to the script no matter what. So I think it was good or impressive to me to see the fact that besides the fact that they were very fluid, very sharp, especially within its offense, with the exception of some of the turnovers. We won't talk about that right now. But they were willing to win or lose playing Hawks brand of basketball.
Yeah.
And I'm always okay with that. We always want to be on the winning side, obviously, but it looked like they just stuck to what they do and didn't try to do things that they were just making up on the fly. We just tried this out earlier in practice. Let's throw it out there and try it tonight. I didn't see that. And I think some of that, alludes into some of the identity. We talked about this, Tenitra, at the beginning of the season, which was probably pretty premature a little bit, but yet still trying to figure out after X amount of games, which I think was pretty extensive, maybe 20 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yep.
What is this team's identity? And we still didn't know. And that already within itself was a concern. I don't even think when we got to the All-Star break or shortly after we said that they had much of an identity. Still in some ways, not totally sure, but the identity that I think that they do have is that they're a fighting team. I feel confident in that.
Okay.
There's a lot of boxes that I don't think that, or I'm not sure that they check, but the one that will fight to the very end and gonna, will be willing to lose playing their brand. I feel confident that this is a fighting team, no matter who they have in front of them.
Okay. I think I can kind of co-sign on that. I hate to say that at this juncture of the year, of the season, where there are only 7 games left. Kind of tough for me to call that, or 6 games left, kind of tough to call it an identity, but maybe better late than never to formulate it. And I do agree that I think ultimately when you look at the way they played basketball, I'll even give them credit for fighting on the road trip, because I don't think it was ever a situation, even though we know they went 1-4, it was never a situation where I felt like the Hawks just didn't show up. I felt so this probably could be considered an identity that they're formulating, where it's a never say quit identity, which is interesting because that's kind of the commentary that you've heard about Dejounte Murray. Like, that's the kind of motor he has. And so that would be in lockstep with him kind of leading the charge, for lack of a better term, the fact that he has that kind of no quit motor and that kind of no quit mindset. So, okay, I'll give a bit of a cosign on that one. I do think you're absolutely right as far as efficiency was concerned. You can't get any better than 50% from the field, almost 48% from 3. And granted, you did it against a team that is amongst the worst when you are looking at 3-pointers made in the league. It's just kind of not what they do. Like, they don't guard well. They're the worst in the association. But guess what? That's not the Hawks' problem.
Nope.
If the Hawks can take advantage of it, take
Yep.
advantage of it. Just no different than, hey, sometimes you were up against them being depleted, especially inside and on some level outside for those first couple games.
Mm-hmm.
And they took advantage of what you gave them. So,
Of
hey,
you.
take advantage of what the defense gives you. And speaking of defense, that was for me, my takeaway. It may have been a bucket more than they would have wanted, but defense was still a good look. I know that NBA teams love to be able to say they held a team under 100 points, right? So,
No
okay,
doubt.
the Hawks didn't quite hold them under 100, maybe just a bucket over, but still, that's pretty darn impressive because they held them under 40% from the field, but more importantly, under 25% from three. That's crazy. And I really, really also like the fact that they kind of forced Chicago's defense a little bit because, and whether you consider the Bucks defense or whether you consider it the referees, ultimately the Hawks really didn't get to the charity stripe very much on Saturday. At least they got there and had an opportunity. They didn't do great from the free throw line. I know you don't like them shooting 67% from the charity stripe, but the bottom line is they got there. And that speaks to the aggressiveness and sort of the fight and the push. But I love the fact that they were battling, especially with defensive rebounds, had a little trouble with offensive rebounds. So not a lot in the way of second chance points, but let's just be real. They didn't really need a lot in the way of second chance points tonight because the shots they took were quality shots that they actually made. But I think too, in being able to get 5 blocks, shout out to Clint Capella for continuing to play efficiently and effectively and continuing to look like his old self. And, got to give him so much credit for that. And I think for me, that's the thing, like overall, collectively, when you also look down the box score, and I love to look down the box score when I don't see donuts in rebounds for anybody. Everybody on the Hawks team had at least 1 rebound tonight.
Sure.
Everybody. And what that speaks to is just what you said, efficiency and effort that tell the story of what we saw with this Hawks team against the Bulls tonight.
Well, you mentioned, so many different things. I'm glad that you gave some credit to Clint, because I'm going to give some credit to the guy who's backing him up, which I've been feeling like it's been a big time energy boost for this team lately. And I mean, when you're thinking about it, think about the way, and I know that I know that Andre Drummond had another significantly solid game. I think 13 points and 18 rebounds or something along those lines, whatever it was. But that was one of the matchups, I think, outside of the, how things were going to go with Dejounte. We know that he was going to be keyed in on from guys like, Alex Caruso, for example, who we know is a really gritty defender, really gets after it. Ayo Dosunmu is another one. And they're just pretty much going to be, wrecking havoc pretty much on Dejounte Murray. But the other matchups, I think, was in the front court where, most people would probably agree maybe that Andre Drummond, the combination between him and Vucevic, who they did a fine job on Vucevic, not allowing him to get any more than like 5 points.
5 points.
Going up against some pretty offensively challenged Clint Capella and Bruno Fernando. Bruno with 10 points, 4 rebounds and 4 assists, I think.
Yep.
Hardly ever hear her talk about, 4 assists for Bruno Fernando. So, I feel like they won that battle. That was one of those sneaky matchups that I don't think really gets talked about all that much. And then the adjustments, I got to give some credit to, obviously the coaching staff and Quinn Snyder for the adjustments they made, because the Hawks came out, turned the ball over 3 straight times.
Yes.
I think the Bulls went on an 8-0, run to open up the game, and then turned out 11-2 run and whatever else. But the Hawks made an 8-0 run themselves. They made an 11-2 run themselves. They made those adjustments even when it felt like, the Chicago Bulls were on a back-to-back, and you felt like you wouldn't even have known it, but they did a good job. And when they found a way to take the lead, there wasn't no looking back. And I think that says something about a Hawks team that is as depleted as they are to be able to take the lead and not give it back.
Yeah, and especially also giving some credit to their ability to keep Ayo Dosunmu in check, because he absolutely destroyed the Hawks the last go round. And that was probably my biggest concern. Like, what in the world are they going to do with the backcourt? But yeah, I feel like this go round, finally we can say the Hawks backcourt won up the Bulls backcourt, and we hadn't been able to say that in the first couple of games that these teams faced one another. So we know that this was a big win because it does have implications for the play-in round.
Yes.
So this was one that the Hawks absolutely had to get. We'll be right back to tell you how the Hawks took a page from the Braves book with the beatdowns from the south side that the Braves put on the White Sox to the west side of Chicago, where the Hawks, put it on the Bulls. We'll talk about it in the and one. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. So PrizePicks, of course, is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Now, March is over, but the biggest moments in college basketball tip off are in the month of April. Be a part of the action on PrizePicks for both men's and women's college basketball. You know that the Final Four will not disappoint. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can also now win up to $100 times your money on PrizePicks with at least and as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is LOCKEDONNBA. That's the code you use for a first deposit match up to $100 after you download the PrizePicks app. The PrizePicks app will get you to pick more or pick less. It's that easy. It's that simple. So, DeShaun, it was a bit of a bloodbath for ATL teams in the last 36 hours. Yes, the A is greater. But yesterday, of course, it started here in Atlanta, but Atlanta United took on Chicago Fire, beat them 3-0. And then the Braves were up on the south side of Chicago today, beat the Chicago White Sox 9-0. So there was a little theme there of kind of shutting folks out. So yeah, we kind of wanted like the equivalent of a shutout in basketball is probably if you get a team under 100. Hawks almost got there with the 113-101 win, but those guys are still going to get all the love that they deserve for what they were able to do today. And really, if we're being honest, DeShaun, it started before they got to Chicago. It started on the homestand. And even a little bit, we saw some shades and flashes of it on that 5-game road trip. But it really all goes back to 5, right? It goes back to 5 because Dejounte Murray is really the one who each game in, game out, quarter in, quarter out, my guy put in work last week. And the NBA confirmed all the flowers that we'd already given him by announcing today that he was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. First nod for DJ.
No doubt. And listen, I mean, when you start looking at these numbers over the course of, just even in just the last 18 games, right? 26 points, and these are averages, 9 assists, 2 steals, 10 double-doubles in 18 games. I mean, even when he's like dog tired, I mean, when you got those games against Boston, those are almost like 2 games in one to a degree.
Right.
They played
like
2 of them.
Level.
Exactly. And they played 2 of them in a matter of 3 games.
Yes.
By the way, a Milwaukee team that's going to be contending for a championship along with Boston, by the way. You know that Dejounte is dog tired. To come out, have your 17 points, which is on a low end, right? Your 8 rebounds. Yeah. How much better can it get from a rebounding guard, right? Who's not like the biggest or strongest dude, type of guard or anything like that. 6 assists to go on top of that. You don't have nearly as many options. You still don't have Bay. Yes, you have Jalen Johnson, but he's kind of a shell of himself on his first game back. Yeah. You also don't have, Trey and I feel like I'm missing somebody. Onyeka Okongwu. You don't have guys to lob to and other things. You got a very limited offensive front court, like we talked about between Clint and Bruno. So, I mean, to still be able to get those assists off, you got 6 on plus 50% from 3. Like, if you got to, it feels like all world right now. MVP, okay, probably not. But MVP of this team so far, I mean, I don't think anybody's really questioning that. I'm listening to the broadcast of some of these other teams, and when I'm watching the game, because I don't always watch on Bally all the time, but I do like to hear the things that they're saying about our team, and the kind of love that they're showing. Dejounte Murray. It's all warranted. It's all well-deserved. Kudos to Dejounte Murray, Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and I tip my cap, no doubt.
Yeah, and it always takes me back to when I did in-game analyst work for the Hawks a couple seasons ago, and they would come in, and there were two guys, and I knew, and it's funny because for whatever reason, maybe because Derek White was the one who would come in and give the Hawks the fits most often, I knew exactly who he was because at the time, like 2 or 3 seasons ago, I was lobbying for the Hawks to get him at the trade deadline. But there was this one game in particular I will never forget because I used to do keys of the game pregame, and then I talk about the keys to the second half for the Hawks to win, and had to completely retool my keys to the game from pregame because I was like, who the heck is this 5? And don't get me wrong, I knew who Dejounte Murray was, but it was the way that he went about his business. It was just with such authority, like very modest. I mean, you know, he's slight of build, so nothing that would make you kind of blink. But man, listen, when the ball got in his hand and he went to work, I was like, wow, that sure would be nice. But again, he wasn't a guy that was ever talked about as being on the trade block. So he was literally someone who I was just kind of looking at like, wow, that'd be a nice guy to have if you could. And then, of course, then you ended up with him.
Something else that I think has been really impressive, because I know he got Eastern Conference Player of the Week, but this is kind of stretched out and gone beyond just this past week. When you start looking at the month of March, this actually kind of interests me a little bit, has scored 400 plus points in the month of March alone. He's fourth on that list. Luka's first, Jalen Green second. DeMar DeRozan, who we just saw tonight, took an L to the Atlanta Hawks, is third, and Dejounte Murray in fourth on that list. So, I mean,
go back and read the list again, DeShaun.
Okay, no doubt. So you have Luka Doncic in first. You have Jalen Green in second. You have DeMar DeRozan in third. And Dejounte Murray in fourth.
Think about the guys who are ahead of Dejounte on that list.
That's
These
a great
guys
list.
That score at will. Like they make a living from scoring, especially Luka Doncic. So for Dejounte to be in that group, what it says is you can score at clips when you need to. If you need to get 44 points in 47 minutes, you can do that. Or if you just need to get 17 points tonight and get everybody else involved, you can do that too. It's like Willie said, it was an impressive win. And he said two of my favorite words in all the English language when I'm talking basketball: balanced scoring.
That's right.
I am not a fan at all of hero ball, never have been. I always love when I can look down that stat line and see assists. And then Big O says, I hate fighting for the 8th seed, but go Hawks. Man, listen. You better like the fact that you can still fight for a seed.
Whatever seed. Whatever seed. Hey, pumpkin seed. Any seed. How about I got one for you. Too. Mustard seed. Okay.
Hey, have some faith in people. Have some faith the size of one, and look what happens. And it's funny because when we start these conversations, sometimes we get a little nervous because the Hawks can hurt your heart, right? But even in the loss Saturday to the Bucks, like my heart wasn't hurt because they straight up battled the Bucks like they always do, and didn't have the guy who usually battles the hardest and a lot of times gets over the top, which is Onyeka Okongwu. And that's what was impressive to me in that loss. And even tonight, we talked about how the inactives for the Hawks really told the story in that game Saturday against the Bucks, right? Onyeka Okongwu being one of them, Trae Young, Sadiq Bey, Jalen Johnson, Kobe Bufkin. That's a long list, but guess who re-entered the chat tonight? Jalen Johnson and Kobe Bufkin, and both really gave you something that you could work with as a team. In fact, Jalen Johnson, 8 points in 3 minutes just to get the party started in the first quarter, ends up, of course, with 11 points, 4 rebounds, and a couple steals, and then in just 25 minutes. And that's a solid number when you think about, quote unquote, a minutes restriction. And then Kobe Bufkin comes in for 17 minutes. And again, with Kobe Bufkin be careful not to get caught up in his numbers because, yes, you do only see 3 points, but you also see 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. That's what you need to see because that is the two-way play that you're looking for from the rookie.
I was just going to say really quickly, Kobe Bufkin is one of those guys that he's not a look at the box score and stat sheet. You have to watch the game to kind of see his impact. And it kind of seems similar a little bit sometimes when I'm watching Bruno, to be able to see the energy that he brings to this team off of the little bit sometimes that he scores, or when he doesn't score, but some of the little things that he does. Both of those guys, I think that's where they're kind of showing the contribution or their value to this team more than anything.
That's a great point. And sometimes, and tonight they both Fernando and Bufkin have a 0, like they don't have a plus minus ratio, but oftentimes that's where you and I will look because a lot of times that plus minus ratio will tell a better story than even the stats would. And oftentimes for Bruno and for Kobe, that's where you can really tell what impact they had, regardless of what that final box score says. Now, next up, we'll talk about the Hawks having a chance to do something they haven't done all season when we get back in Who's Got Next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. So Fire TV is your destination for sports, and more sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewer experiences. And the really cool thing about it is it's right there on your smart TV. Also, it's right there with your Fire TV sticks. You can plug that into your existing TV, and that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Now, Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, all of it. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. And if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, DeShaun, we are looking at an opportunity here that would put the Hawks in rare air. They have not swept a team so far this season, but got a chance to do it when they come back home to take on the Detroit Pistons Wednesday. So coming off of this really great win against Chicago, got a lot of momentum even from the last homestand. What are some of the keys to them getting a win Wednesday night?
Wow. I almost don't know where to go with this one, Tenitra, because I don't want to give just the regular old stuff that I still feel like is even important during this game. I obviously wasn't impressed, and nobody was in terms of the turnovers. I think 15 on tonight. That was far too many.
Yeah, uncharacteristic of them.
But I will say that Detroit is just one of those sneaky teams, right? We think about them,
the Hawks, yep.
And it's for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, you know,
right.
and they have a way sometimes with keeping things close with the Hawks sometimes, what I think the first thing that Atlanta cannot afford to do is to look at this game and assume that it's automatically a win because you're looking at the Pistons record. We still associate the Pistons with the record that they had, you know, when they, you know, broke the record
22
of so many games
exactly
in a row. That is not the same deal on this side. Now, are they going to contend for a spot in the playoffs? No, of course not. But you have to pretend that they are. You have to pretend that the red, white, and blue that you see on the other side, if you're the Atlanta Hawks, you have to pretend that red, white, and blue is Celtics green and white. Or, you know, whomever you've been playing your best, whoever you play your best brand of basketball against, Miami Heat, black and red, whatever the case may be. I think that's just really it's a mentality thing. I don't know if it's necessarily about what they have to do on the floor. I think, you know, the other thing is it was really exciting to see, and I know we're still going to talk about Vit Krejci and whatnot, but getting those guys involved from three. Maybe tonight it wasn't Hunter's night. I understand that. Hunter hit some big shots in the game, over the last, course of the last couple nights.
Yeah.
Vit Krejci, obviously. Garrison Matthews, Wes Matthews, sometimes they're kind of relying on some of his outside shooting as well, especially when he's open. Shoot it out there. So
Yeah.
I think it's some of those little things that don't have anything to do with X's and O's. It's more so about the mentality entering the game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would have to agree because the mindset of a Vit Krejci or Bruno Fernando or even a Kobe Bufkin coming back, you want them to have an opportunity to continue to build confidence because these guys are going to be headed, especially Vit and Kobe, headed into the postseason, into a play-in round that has so much pressure because
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to, just like it says, play into the postseason like you
Mm-hmm.
haven't gotten there yet. So I think it's a great opportunity for them to show out individually again, but also to show you the cohesion, like the collective, the togetherness that they've been playing with. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's something that Quinn Snyder talks about all the time. And it probably sounds cliche-ish, but it's really not
Sure.
because that communication piece and that togetherness and being on the same page of what you're trying to accomplish with every possession, with every quarter, with every game, it is so very important because like you said, don't take the Pistons for granted. They might be a 13-win team, but last I checked, you do know you dropped the game against a 13. Well, you gave a team their 13th win of the season. At the time, they were a 12-win team in the Charlotte Hornets. Now, I understand that was 2 Charlotte Hornets games ago for the Hawks, but you definitely don't ever want to get caught slipping and find yourself with all of the momentum that you've built up over the homestand and even taking this road trip to Chicago and taking a win. You don't want to come back home and have a slip up. It would be great if you could take sort of this last stretch of games for the season heading into the postseason and really kind of make a statement, especially for your guys like Vit, having a night like this where he goes 6 of 6 from 3. That's the kind of thing you want him. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Because we need that beat. We need all that energy. We need you to have that in about 2 to 3 weeks when the play-in round starts.
No, and I agree with that. I mean, tonight felt like one of those nights, especially for him, where it was like he couldn't miss a shot on purpose if he wanted to. And I mean, give the credit also to Dejounte and the other guys who are playing defending on Alex Caruso as well. Just on last night, and this is the type of mentality they have to have because obviously Cade Cunningham is a load within himself as well. Totally different player than Caruso, but on last night against Minnesota, Caruso became the first Chicago Bull with 7+ threes that he converted on, 5 rebounds, 5 steals, and 5 blocks. Tonight, 8 points, 5 rebounds, and shot under 25%. The mentality that they came in with said, we're not going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves 2.0 in this situation. So I think it was the defensive mindset that they came in knowing what he did against Minnesota last night. I think that, and that started at the beginning of the game. I think that that needs to be very much the mindset with going in against Cade Cunningham.
I think so too. And now you're having a conversation that, let's face it, just 2 weeks ago, we didn't think we were going to have. We thought that this team was locked and loaded into that 10th spot. And now we're having conversations about them legit being able to host a play-in game. Like,
yeah, I know, right?
when did that? I mean, we hadn't seen any parts of that in a minute. So we appreciate the Hawks for what they were able to get done in Chicago tonight. And hopefully they'll be able to bring that same energy back home to State Farm Arena when they take on the Pistons Wednesday. Like you said, Willie, no excuses Wednesday. None at all. You get back home and you get it done and you continue to get it done until this show is having a conversation with Willie and all the time guests who pull up for our postcast until we're having a conversation about the postseason. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you Wednesday night.